Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is AG. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you guys how I achieved this beautiful look. So make sure you subscribe to our channel and put on your post notification so that you get notified each time we upload our new video. I started by cleaning her face using micellar cleansing water from Huda Beauty and a cotton disc. So this is me just cleaning her face to remove all the hidden dirt. You don't want to be building your makeup on hidden dirt or building on dirty face. Cleaning is very essential for makeup. This is to make your skin ready to accept the product. After doing that, I use fan to dry it up, and when it's already dry up, I'm going to be moisturizing the face. So I use Moist Essence Moisturizer from Blossom Cosmetic. So this is me just moisturizing the face, making sure the face is well hydrated. So I was literally just pressing everything in to ensure the face is well hydrated. So moisturizing the skin is very essential for makeup. Whether the skin is dry skin, oily skin, every skin type requires hydration. So hydration is very essential. So when I was done with that, I now went in to dry everything off. So moving on, I'm going to be priming the face using mattifying primer from veebeauty. So I applied the primer around her T-zones. So I was just pressing in the product using the flat brush. Guys, this brush is very good. It pressed in the product so well. So when you're priming your face, remember to not apply the primer under her eyes. You don't want that area to be too concentrated since it's a very delicate area. So when I did that, I used my hand to further press everything in. So I was just literally massaging her face, pressing in the primer. So I locked everything in using a fix spray from Kiss Beauty, and then I went further to air dry the product. So for this look, I actually mixed two foundations to get her desired skin tone. So I used veebeauty and Adventure. For veebeauty, I used the shade Ebony 9, and for Adventure, I used Fawn. So I mixed the two foundations, 50% of each shade, to get a perfect match for her skin. So I applied the foundation on different sections of her skin. So I use a very soft and damp. When I say damp, it should be wet, but in such a way that when you press it, when you squeeze it, water will not come out from the beauty blender. So I use a very soft beauty blender, soft and damp beauty blender from CPD. So this is me just blending. I was literally just pressing in. When you're blending your foundation, you use your beauty blender to press in. You press in the product into her skin. You don't scrub, you just press in. So I was pressing in the foundation to get it smooth. So this is me just pressing in, making sure every section of her face is covered with the foundation. So when I'm blending my foundation, I make sure I start from one section of her face. I blend uniformly, moving from one section to the other, making sure I get rid of every demarcation. Everywhere is smooth. There is no demarcation, there is no harsh line, or there is no patch everywhere. I highlighted his face with the Spotless Concealer from Blossom Cosmetic in the shade Mocha 180. So remember, whenever you want to highlight the face, always use a concealer or highlighter which is 1 to 2 shades lighter than your foundation. So as you can see, the concealer I use is 1 shade lighter than my foundation. This particular concealer does not easily get dry, so I left it there for it to get tacky, and then I started contouring her face. So I applied the contour. I used a foundation from veebeauty in the shade Ebony 9, which is 2 shades darker than her skin. So I was just applying it on her forehead, around the temple. Going down to her cheek, I applied from where her ear begins. So that's me just blending in. I started blending in the contour, making sure I get rid of every demarcation. There is no harsh line between the 2 points. So I blend in everything, making sure everything sits in well. I now added blush to her face to give the face a little bit of warmness and color. So I use this red shade from the lip palette. So I blended the blush around the apple of her cheek. This is me just blending in, making sure everything is in place. Moving Moving forward, I started blending in my concealer. So I started blending from the outer corner to the inner corner, making sure, see the way I place my brush, the middle of my beauty blender is between the line that separates the highlighter and the blush. So I started blending from that, making sure my beauty blender is around that corner. I make sure I blend everything to get rid of every demarcation. So I was just pressing in everything, pressing in the product, making sure everything is smooth, everything is in place. Blend and blend, you press in. I went to the forehead, I started pressing in to get rid of every demarcation. So I just blend every section of her face to get rid of any harsh line or demarcation. To set the face, I use the Merak setting powder in the shade Cinnamon. So this is me just setting the face, setting under her eyes. So when setting the face, make sure you set the highlighted area. Ask the client to look up, you set under her eyes, highlight all the highlighted area. So this is me just setting the highlighted area using the setting powder. This setting powder is actually very good. This setting powder is actually very nice. This is one of the best setting powder I know. I mean, you don't stress in blending. The product just get in, sinks into her face. I mean, the setting powder is a real deal. To set the rest of her face, I use the powder palette from veebeauty to set her entire face, the rest of her face. So doing that, I just pat gently, guys. Do not push your brush hard into her skin, into your client's skin. Sorry, just pat gently. Get the product, pat gently to set everywhere.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.
So for contouring, I use a shade on the powder palette, which is one shade darker than her skin. So I applied on her forehead, around her cheeks, starting from her ear, coming downward. Then I try to blend everything, making sure there's no demarcation around. For nose contouring, still on that powder palette, I use a powder shade which is one shade darker than her skin shade. Powder meant for her skin. So I just literally contour the nose, making it more precise and sharper. Then I try to blend in everything. When I was done with that, and I use my Kiss Beauty Fix Spray to put everything in place. Use my fan to air dry it. After doing that, and I went in with baking. I started baking the face. So for baking, I actually use the same setting powder I use in setting her face, the Merak setting powder in the shade Cinnamon. Sorry. So when I was applying the setting powder, I make sure I kept a lot of it under her eye so that the excess eyeshadow fallout can be easily taken out, and the setting powder under her eyes can absorb any moisture. For reverse contour, I use powder which is one shade lighter than her skin. For her brows, I use Brow Tamer by Nikki Signature to lay down the hair. So I was just brushing it down, making sure everything is in place and in order. So when I was done with that, and I use the same setting powder, Mirror setting powder, to press it down, because some of these brow steamer contains a lot of oil. So I actually use setting powder to make it mix. To outline her brows, I used a flat angle brush and brows gel from KR Cosmetic. So I started by outlining the lower section of her brows. So at this point, you take everything slowly. You don't need to be in a hurry, because for your perfect brows, you need to have a perfect outline. Your outline needs to be really clean, really need to be perfect. So when I was done with the lower section, I went to the upper section. So I was just producing the outline to get the right shape. So when I was getting towards the end, and I tilted downwards to get it right. So when I was done with one section, I went out to the other side with the brows. I repeated the same thing. I started with the bottom. I did the lower section. I outlined the lower section. Finishing with that, I went out to the upper section. To fill the brows, I use a well sharpened Davis pencil in the shade 003. So this is me just trying to fill in the gap. So to conceal the brows, I use a well precise angle brush for concealing. So I actually use foundation to conceal the beginning of the brows. The reason why I'm using foundation is for easy blending. Foundation does not get dry easily, so when you want to blend, it blends easily. So I use a darker foundation which is the same as her skin tone, and towards the ending I now use a lighter foundation to make the brows pop out and make it more precise. So I was just trying to sharpen the brows, make it more precise. So after concealing the lower section of her brows, I now use a small fluffy brush to blend the product, making everything even and smooth. So this is me just blending in the product to make it even and very smooth. You don't want any harshness around that area. Before I went now to conceal the other section of her brows, to conceal the other side. So I repeated the same thing I did. I started with the foundation. I actually use foundation for concealing. I use a foundation which is equivalent to her skin shade. Then moving that's towards the beginning, and then moving towards the end. I now use a lighter foundation to make the brows pop out and precise. So when I was done, I try to drag the product down, and I use a small fluffy brush to blending. To conceal the upper section of the brows, I use the same angle brush I used, but you could still use a flat brush, a brush which is very flat. Use the same angle brush, using the same foundation shade I used at the beginning of the bottom of the brows. I'm using the same shade because I don't want any harshness, any harsh line. So after concealing, use a small soft fluffy brush to blend out the concealer, and when you're done with that, you use the powder to cover that up because you don't want that area left oily or moist. For the lower section, use a powder shade which is the same as the foundation shade you use in concealing. So as you can see, for the beginning I use a darker shade towards the beginning, and then towards the end I now use a lighter shade of powder because I don't want that area to be moist. For her eyeshadow, I started by applying eyeshadow base on Blossom Cosmetic. So I applied on her eyelid, around the eyeballs, the both sides. For blending, I started blending the edges to make sure there's no demarcation. I blend from the edges before going in now to press in the eyeshadow base. I make sure I blend so well in order to get rid of any demarcation. Using a small, well precise fluffy brush, I started applying the eyeshadow around the crease area. I started from the inner corner to the outer corner, leaving the base, leaving the middle section. So I was just starting blending from the inner corner to the outer corner. I repeated the same thing on the other section. So I was just blending. Make sure you blend from the inner corner to the outer corner to get rid of any demarcation. Sorry. So when I was done with that shade, I went now with a darker shade. It's not too dark, but it's closer to dark, like a dark brown shade. So I applied on on that same position. So I applied from the inner corner to the outer corner, inner corner to the outer corner. When I was done with that, I now went in to apply my main color, which is the orange shade. Applied on the area around the eyeballs, which contains the eyeshadow base. So I just blend in, did the other section, make sure I blended very well to make it very smooth. So after applying my main eyeshadow, I use the same small fluffy brush to blend out the edges, making sure there is no demarcation. So I use the brush, I was just blending the edges to make it smooth and making sure there's no demarcation. So when you're blending, you blend from the inner corner to the outer corner, inner corner to the outer corner. To line her eyes, I used the KR brows gel and a small precise angle brush to do that. So I started from the outer corner to the inner section. So I was just lining, making sure it's very precise and sharp. I repeated the same exercise for the other section. I started by positioning something like a triangle and then lining the eye. So after lining her eyes, I now brush her natural lashes with the mascara to get rid of the eyeshadow fallout. Normally, after applying eyeshadow, some of the eyeshadow will fall on the natural lashes, making it look a bit whitish. So I have to do that. For the eyelashes, I did it off camera. So when I was done with that, I started smoothing out the under eye using I started with something like a pink eyeshadow. Then I went in now with a dark brown, almost black, and then I also did the water lining off camera because my client was tearing up. At this point, I was just trying to get rid of the eyeshadow fallout, so I used that flat brush to just get rid of the eyeshadow fallout. So after doing that, I started pressing in a setting powder. So I was just pressing that in, making that area smooth. I started pressing it. I started from the outer corner towards the inner corner, making it smooth. So that's it. I did for one section, went to the other side of her face, did the same thing, just press in, making sure there's no demarcation. Moving towards her nose, just pressing it from that corner. I did the same, repeated the same exercise. So that's just it. For the blush, I use the orange shade from the exclusive blush palette. So I applied it around her cheek, doing that to and fro, pressing that in, making sure it's well blended and there's no demarcation. I did it for both sections, both sides of her face. I just blended in, making sure there's no demarcation. And then I use my other fluffy brush to make sure everything is well defined. So when I was done with that, I set the facing the Kiss Beauty Fix Spray. So I used that stuff to cover the eyeshadow. I don't want the spray around that area. So when I was done, I used my fan to dry it. From there, I started outlining the lips using the brows gel, the KR brows gel in the shade 02. So I was just outlining it, making the lips more precise. I did it for the upper section of the lips and the lower section of the lips. So after producing the outline, I now use a small fluffy brush, a well precise small fluffy brush, to just blend the edges. That's the point between the lining and the other space. I just blend in the edges to make everything smooth and even. So after doing that, I now went in the brown shade from my lip palette. So I just applied all over her lips. So when I was done, I used a small fluffy brush to blend, make everything even. So I was just blending the point between the liner and the other lip color I added. I just blended, making everything even. So when I was done with that, I now asked her to smack her lips to make it blend very well. To proceed, I applied the light pink on the lower lips. That's from the lip palette. When I was done applying, I blended. Like when you're blending, you blend the edges. You don't want any demarcation between the 2 points. And then ask how to smack the lip to make everything even. So I wanted the lip to really pop out. So I now went in with a dark purple shade. So using my angle blush, I I gave a tiny line on top of the lip and below. Just line the lip just to make it pop out. So that's it. I was just producing the outline. So after producing the outline at the top, I did the same at the bottom. And then after doing that, I used a small fluffy brush to blend it, making sure it's smooth and there's no demarcation. So before applying the lip gloss, I first of all went in with highlighter. I used a Blossom highlighter palette to just bronze her face, to give that glow. So I did that on her cheek, and then her nose, just to make that precise. So when I was done with that, I also used a flat brush to blend that. So at this point, I was just blending the bronze, that's the highlighter, because I never wanted it to look too harsh. I was just blending, I wanted it to be smooth. So I just used that to blend and blend. I did the same thing on her forehead, even on the nose. For the lip gloss, I actually use a clear lip gloss. So I always start by starting from the bottom, like doing the darker section before going to the more pigmented section, because I don't want the colors to mix. So at this point, I was just trying to brush the bottom lashes with the mascara. So to see everything up, I used the So Pro Seal It spray to just lock the makeup in. So I was literally just spraying it, and when you're spraying, you should not be too close to her face. When I was done with that, I dried the face. So guys, this is the finished look. What do you think? Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe guys. Thank you. Bye.